Well, thank you all so much for inviting us, for doing what you do. I very much value advocating for community, and I'll talk about that a bit. My name is Claudia Balducci. I am a King County Council member for District 6, which covers large parts of the east side, Bellevue, Kirkland, Redmond, Mercer Island, and the Points communities. I am a previous Bellevue mayor and city council member and a resident of the Lake Hills neighborhood in East Bellevue. And I'll tell you why that matters. That's where I started my political career, was advocating for my neighborhood. Lake Hills, if you know it, is one of the older parts of Bellevue, but it was annexed late. It was one of the last big communities annexed into the city of Bellevue. So I know a little bit about a community that wasn't invested in because it was part of King County until it became part of a nearby city. But also the challenge of being annexed by a nearby city that then kind of saw the neighborhood as a place where you could put the stuff that the real parts of Bellevue didn't want to have. So I started out in politics advocating for my neighborhood. We had a neighborhood shopping center. It was the site of the very first QFC, grocery store. And the grocery store was going away. The shopping center was going dark. We were losing our local retail. And I joined with some of my neighbors to advocate for more investment and for some zoning changes in our neighborhood in order so that it could thrive. And that's how I got my start in politics, was showing up for the neighborhood. I also started my neighborhood association. I organized my neighbors into a group so that we could educate ourselves, know about the issues that local government had control over, and be strong, positive voices for investment and support in our community. That organization is still going today, and I have to say my very first and most beloved job on the board of the Neighborhood Association was to run the candidate forum. So I have a great deal of appreciation for what you're pulling together here this season. A little bit about just my background. You asked for background and qualifications. I think when people hear all that Bellevue, they think that probably I'm a very wealthy person. I am not. I come from a family of public servants. My mother is a retired public elementary school teacher. My stepfather, before he passed, was a retired court officer. My one and only sibling, my brother, is a retired firefighter who is taking care of my mother as she recovers from hip surgery this week. And I myself am a public servant. I have worked for King County for over 25 years. I'm a labor lawyer by training. My degree is from Columbia Law School. And I worked in law a little while, but that was not very satisfying to me. I wanted to be in public service. So I have been a labor negotiator, and I worked with the jails for much of my career with King County, including running a jail reform effort, and then ultimately becoming the director of the Department of Adult and Juvenile Detention, which I ran for a number of years. So I have executive experience running a $100 million department, and now I'm on the King County Council serving my district. So that's sort of my background. The reason why I am running for county executive, our county has a $10 billion a year budget. That's a lot of money. And a lot of it is dedicated, like we can't take money from the wastewater treatment or from the sewer fees and use it for something else, but it's a lot of money. And we have a lot of service needs that we are not meeting today. We're not doing the best we can on homelessness. We're not doing the best we can on public safety. I was so glad to get to sort of say hi, or at least from a distance, to your community service officer, but I know that unincorporated parts of King County really don't have the kinds of services that you need in a community. You haven't had a storefront officer here in many years, I believe, and we could do better. So when I became part of the cabinet for Dow Constantine as a department director, you're part of the leadership of the county, we were working on annexation. And we were talking about places like Highline for annexation. Because, and you undoubtedly heard this over the years many, many times, it's hard for the county with our level of taxation. Is that my 5-minute mark?
No.
Wow, that really somebody may want to have gone too long. It's difficult for us to provide the level of services to a community like this that an incorporated community gets from their city. So I was the mayor of an incorporated city, and then I became a county council member, and I saw very clearly the difference between the types of services a neighborhood like mine, even one that feels underinvested in my city, receives versus what unincorporated urban areas receive in King County. I was part of the move to create the Department of Local Services as one way to start to address that. Because if you live in a city, you have a mayor, you have city council members, you have people you can call that represent you to the government. If you live in unincorporated King County, you've got one of us. That's it. And the executive probably doesn't spend a lot of their personal time hanging out here representing unincorporated King County. So I was really proud of that effort. That gave, for the first time, a place where people could really go, and we expect responsiveness. But it's just a first step, right? There's a lot more that needs to be done. So I'm sure we'll talk about all of that later tonight, but I want to make sure that King County serves the community that we are the local and regional government for very well. I have dedicated my career to making local government work well, and I want to make it work well for all the people of King County. You asked a question about Highline and how often we get here. I've got to be very honest. I represent East King County. I don't get here all that often. One of the best things about running for this office is I've been able to get around the county and see all the different parts of it, hear from people. I hope we don't just talk at you tonight. I hope we get to hear from you tonight about what you need and what King County could do better for you, because that is such a benefit. No matter what happens in this election, the both of us are still going to be in King County government. One of us is going to be the executive, the other one's going to be on the county council. So this is an opportunity for us to really engage with and learn from and be better representing the entire county, including your neighborhood. So I'm really looking forward to this discussion tonight. And again, thanks for organizing it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us, everyone. Really appreciate it. My name is Gurmai. For those of you who have trouble pronouncing that, it's like my guy Gurmai, if that helps. Gurmai Zahalai. I'm the chair of the King County Council. I represent District 2 on the King County Council, which is your neighbors to the east, not the far east, but east of here. So starting from the northernmost point, University District, Laurelhurst, Ravenna, going down south to Capitol Hill, the Central District of Seattle, South Seattle, unincorporated Skyway, and a little sliver of Tukwila called Allentown, which is where I live. I'm running for King County Executive because I believe that this is a really important level of government, a rare opportunity to shape the future of our region. I think with effective policies and thoughtful collaboration, we can build a region of safety and opportunity for everyone. And I know what this region can be because I know what it was for me and my family when we came to this region. For those of you who I haven't had a chance to meet, my story starts before I was born. My family fled Ethiopia during a civil war, crossed the border into Sudan, and I was born there in Sudan as a refugee. When I turned 3, through refugee resettlement programs, we were able to board a plane, fly across the Atlantic Ocean, come to this area. Since I was 3 years old, raised here. I care a lot about this community, and it's also true that my family and I faced a lot of the challenges that people in this area face, from affordability to public safety issues and much more. My parents divorced when I was really young, and my mom had to work as a nursing assistant. One job wasn't enough, so she picked up a second job. Second job wasn't enough, so she picked up a third job, making minimum wage, helping some of our seniors and nursing assistants all around the region. She actually worked so much that she ended up busting both of her knees, and now she's disabled and can't work. So that is one of my driving forces into public service, the idea that I know that our economy is not set up for everybody to succeed. A lot of people are working harder and harder and getting less and less out of it. Even to the point where, despite my mom working 2 or 3 jobs, we still lived in public housing like Rainier Vista and New Holly. Anybody know where those Seattle Public Housing Authority projects are? And then when I was a teenager, we lived in the Skyway area, and so understanding the impact of the lack of services in urban unincorporated areas and how that impacted me and my family is also another driving force into public service. I say all of these challenges to note that there were challenges, but there's another side to the story, which is that because of an effective local government, because of strong social safety nets, affordable public housing, good public schools, jobs, my family, despite living in public housing and experiencing poverty, I was still able to graduate from Franklin High School nearby, go to college down in Stanford, get my law degree at the University of Pennsylvania, start my own youth education nonprofit that I was operating in 3 different cities to provide mentorship to youth who are in 7th and 8th grade. And I practiced law at some of the top law firms in the country, including Perkins Coie here, doing startup companies work, and in New York, I was doing mergers and acquisitions work. I ran for the King County Council in 2019, and I was fortunate enough to earn a seat here and start working on a lot of the issues that I care most about: affordable public housing, investing in our mental health services, investing in our transit system, keeping our communities safe. Those are all things that I really, really care about. But that story of experiencing challenges in our local neighborhoods and now getting to represent those same neighborhoods in a position where I can impact policy, that is the American dream story that I want to be available to everyone. And I always tell the story about how, even though I've experienced all those issues, my baby, who was born last year, I have a 1-year-old at home, she gets to have a family where both of her parents are lawyers in one generation. But I'm running for executive because I want to be part of the solution to try and retain that story, because we know that there are a lot of forces at play that are trying to take that American dream story, that story of anyone who is able to come here from any background, is able to work hard, follow the rules, and make a good living. That's something that we know that our astronomical cost of living is not making it possible, our massive shortage of affordable housing, our public safety issues. These are all things that we need to solve, and I believe that this is a rare opportunity for new leadership in a very influential position where we can bring together all of the different departments, the private sector, the nonprofit sector, and move us toward common solutions. If I were to be elected executive, I have 4 top priorities. Number 1 is breaking the cycle, that cycle that we see of too many people going through homelessness, addiction, mental health issues, crime, incarceration. It feels like a never-ending cycle, and I want to break that cycle. They all start with a B, by the way, my four top priorities. Number 2 is build more. I want us to build more affordable housing, build more transit, build more affordable childcare, build our economy, and integrate our local workers into the local economy. Number 3 is boots on the ground. I want this to be a customer service-oriented government where more people outside connecting with neighborhoods, especially in urban unincorporated areas like here and like where I grew up in Skyway, so that nobody has any question about who is their representative and the special role that we have in unincorporated areas like this to deliver effective local services. And finally, number 4, the final B, is better government. I want us to be more accountable, more effective, more efficient, and I know we're going to talk a little bit more about that, but those are my starting points. And just like my colleague here said, here to listen, here to learn, here to collaborate, and make sure that we build the region that we all want to see. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to start with one first question. So the North Highline Severia Plan was adopted in 2022, and that will transition parts of North Highline to a high-density neighborhood. And we all know that, like you said, housing is needed and affordable housing is needed for people to live well in this community. But there were a lot of concerns expressed in many meetings we had with the county due to our lack of infrastructure that doesn't even support what we have now. You know, we lack adequate stormwater drainage, we lack sidewalks, we lack adequate green space and parks. The residential streets have not been maintained in many years. We've lost a lot of tree canopy with the development that has taken place over the last 10 to 15 years in the community. And there's nothing in the Severia Plan that addresses these infrastructure needs. And building without addressing these needs only exacerbates inequality. So are you willing to ensure that these issues are addressed? We've been told at various meetings that we'll build first and then deal with the infrastructure later, but that doesn't seem to happen. And how do you propose to ensure that the Severia Plan balances development with sustainability, social equity, and economic vitality?
Is that for a question for me
Yeah,
first?
well, yeah, both of you.
Yeah, it might take a little bit of time to answer this question because it's really important and personal to me. I mentioned before that I grew up in parts of South Seattle as a child, and then when I was a teenager, we moved a little bit south up the Renton Avenue Hill in the Skyway neighborhood, and I didn't know what it meant to be underserved until I moved to Skyway. Even though we were low income in South Seattle, we still had community centers, we had public transit, we had after school activities, we had infrastructure like more sidewalks, and then when we moved up into that area in the Skyway neighborhood, suddenly all of that went away. No community center, few sidewalks, very infrequent public transit. You're driving through and buildings look dilapidated and not taken care of, and that had a real impact on me and my family as when I was a child. It felt like we were isolated, it felt like people didn't care about us, and that was very damaging for us as children. And I know that White Center, as our sister city, or sister neighborhood, experiences a lot of those same issues. And so when I first got on the King County Council, I wanted to make urban unincorporated areas my #1 priority. I championed these areas as much as I could. I worked closely with the Skyway Coalition and many other organizations in that neighborhood. I walked around and met all the small business owners. I wrote op-eds in the Seattle Times and in Crosscut. I marched through the streets during the Black Lives Matter movement in collaboration with our Skyway community members, because Skyway, after the displacement of the Central District in Seattle, has now become the zip code that has the highest proportion of African Americans in the entire state of Washington. And so if Black Lives Matter, Skyway has to matter. And so we connected those two destinies together, and in my first year on the council, we were able to start turning the needle for this area. We were able to get $10 million for the first ever Skyway Community Center, $2 million of which has gone to open the Skyway Resource Centers, building you can walk into right now and get human services, job training, much more. These are things that were not ever there in the Skyway. We were able to get $6 million to expand public transit options, rideshare programs like VIA. We were able to get millions of dollars. I think the total now is $15 million for affordable housing projects in that Skyway area, both home ownership programs and rentals, both of which have begun the process of breaking ground now. We were able to start programs that not only benefit Skyway, but benefit all of urban unincorporated King County, like the $10 million that we got for participatory budgeting, which some of you may have heard of now, which allow the community here to direct how funds are spent on capital projects in your area. We were able to get funding for community centers. We were able to get $5 million to start unincorporated King County economic development, program which some of you have participated in, to provide small business support, technical assistance programs for small businesses, build out career pathways, support innovation in these areas. And I start off with that story to share that I understand that King County has a special obligation to unincorporated areas. Here we are your local government. Claudia or I will be your mayor if we win, because you don't have a city council, you don't have a city mayor. And so we have to prioritize these areas. So there is an element of specific policies that we have to champion, but before we even get there, we have to acknowledge and embrace the special responsibility we have here and prioritize these neighborhoods more than any other. And that's what I have done, that's what my track record has done, and that's what I would do here. And so when you're asking me how we would balance these things, number one, I would direct significantly more resources than you're getting now to these areas based on that special relationship. Number two, I would build an authentic, collaborative relationship with the communities who live here. We do not need a top-down approach. We need to come to community meetings. We need to understand the impact of the decisions that we're making. We know that we cannot just bring an academic or theoretical mindset to these decisions. There are real-world, maybe unintended consequences. And so when I look at the sub-area planning process in Skyway, which is your sister city neighborhood, I was very hands-on with that. You know, we held lots of meetings. We worked with the Department of Local Services. We identified what would be the consequence if we upzoned particular areas in our commercial corridor, what would be the consequence if we added more density, what would happen to the cost of living, what would happen to traffic, Those are all things that we need to take into account, but it begins with focus, prioritization, authentic collaboration.
Thank you.
Thank you. We were both on the county council in 2022, which means we both voted for this sub-area plan. And I think it is very important and quite wonderful that district elected officials are finding ways to make investments in the communities they represent. I've done so in my district as well, and these are important things and things that should continue. The underlying problem when you talk about big ticket items like stormwater, sidewalks, street overlays, these are major investments, way more than $10 million in a biennium or $5 million in a biennium. They are hundreds of millions of dollars in some cases, especially as we saw in my backyard when the county lets the pipes and the overlays degrade too much. Fixing them up to a standard becomes extraordinarily expensive, much more expensive. We have a systemic problem in this neighborhood and in all of unincorporated King County. It's different in rural versus urban, but it is systemic in both places. There is not a dedicated, ongoing, every year funding stream to provide the level of services that people expect and deserve in a suburban or urban environment. You're just underinvested in, and always will be. I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but always will be. No matter how much we care and pull out, even major one-off investments will not fix these systemic problems. And to your question, when nobody has fought harder or worked more for affordable housing in this county than me, I could do my validation. I'm not going to bother you with it, but I have pushed and pushed because I come from a place where people are getting pushed out, where the costs are going up so much that working people can't afford to stay, where my kid who just started college this week is never going to be able to afford to live in the community that they grew up in. But when we say, like, we cannot have a one-size-fits-all approach. If we say, Highline or anywhere, you accept upzoning and you accept more development, these questions should be answered at the same time, not later. And it may not be that we have it all now. Like there's no place I think that has all the infrastructure investments they should when the housing comes, but there should be a path to it. We should be able to look at that county budget and that balance sheet and be able to say, yep, we're going to finish upgrading the streets within 5-10 years. We're going to finish expanding sidewalks so you have a safe place to walk, and that plan does not exist in King County. And by the way, I'm not blaming anybody. It is a systemic structural problem with county government. And so I think the big challenge of the next county executive for these areas is to figure out the next systemic approach to try to fix it. The last systemic approach was when the state gave all the cities a sales tax exemption or incentive and said, please, cities, annex your local areas so that you can provide the appropriate level of services. And it worked some places, it didn't work every place. I'm not sure that even after annexation that means like everything's perfect, but that was one systemic path to lifting up ongoing investments that need to happen in places like this. We have no path to it now. There's no path right now. And I think the job of the next county executive should be to create that path. Work with the state, work with the communities, work with the surrounding cities, and figure out how do we lift up a consistent level of investment that is required. Oh, and then the makeup investment, because now we've got to go, you need even more because we've got to fix what hasn't been kept up. So that's my commitment, and let me just say, I think that your job, first of all, in addition to we get to create this wonderful relationship and dialogue tonight, which I think is worth it regardless of what happens in the election, but your job in thinking about who you want as your next county executive, ask yourself, how do you know that somebody's going to be able to deliver this sorts of things? We're all going to make, every politician makes promises. I make promises, we all make promises. I have worked on big systemic changes in lots of places that have actually worked. I'm probably best known for the light rail in East King County, and now north and south we've been able to push down to Highline, I think you would call it South Highline, anyway, near Highline College. By the way, we pushed really hard to make sure that that wasn't way further east than where it is, so that it serves the community near Highline College, Kent, Federal Way. But these were hard, hard things, billions of dollars in investment, had to raise the money, get votes passed, get through permitting and legal challenges and all, to make things happen. It's that kind of concept through systemic solutions to long-term multifaceted problems to implementation that this community really, really needs. And again, we're both going to be here next year no matter what happens, so I hope that we continue to work on these things together, but that would be my commitment to unincorporated King County. I saw the difference when I came from being a city leader that had only incorporated cities to being a county leader, and the difference is palpable. It's really noticeable, just traveling around and seeing. We need to upgrade our approach. And if that means the county needs to do it because there will be no annexation, okay, but then we gotta go find the funding to do it that doesn't exist today and really make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Patricia, did you want to start?
Yeah, mine has to do with the mental health assistant appropriate platform. How will you support unincorporated areas in accessing outpatient mental health services for middle-aged adults? Because they're too old for youth resources, they're too young for a senior population. What are you going to bring to the table for them? Because they're basically considered invisible right now. They're kind of falling through the cracks. I work in healthcare, and I run across it all the time where I've got a client that's, 45, 46, 47 years old. What resources they have for them takes forever to even get them to where they need to be. So what can you bring to the table?
Yeah, that is such a great question. We do hear an awful lot about the mental health crisis with young people. It's a major point of focus, and so it makes sense that there would be a point we're not focusing on.
Right.
And so I appreciate the question. Can I ask a question back? Are you talking about folks who have insurance or eligible for Medicaid or something else? All of the above. Okay. Well, the first challenge we're going to have is that people are going to lose their coverage. So we don't have enough counselors. We don't have enough places. Even if people have coverage, they can have a hard time finding services. In fact, they can have wait, as you said. And now the federal government is talking about cutting back Medicaid dramatically. So I feel like we have this tremendous need, and the tide is flowing the wrong way. As county executive, what I would love to do is, we have got $1 billion, I think something like $1.5 billion a year in our community and human services, which includes mental health, which includes behavioral health. We just passed a 9-year rollover of our major mental health levy, with no plan for how we're going to spend that money, other than we'll keep the plan we had for the next year or so until we figure out a new plan. So that is a fantastic opportunity for the next county executive. Let's take a good look at where are the unmet needs, where are the things we're doing that maybe aren't the most urgent needs right now, and can I just tell you, that's hard to do. It's hard to say, this thing we used to do, it's not the most urgent need right now, but this is, let's move money over here, but we've got to figure out how to do it. Just a side note, I lived through the cutting of the DARE program. Do y'all remember the DARE program? That program was thoroughly debunked. Thoroughly. All the studies showed that it didn't do any good at all. But it was the thing that existed. And parents who had kids in schools were like, this is the thing that gives me at least some hope that my kids are getting some education to keep them off of drugs. But all the science showed that it wasn't doing any good. And we wanted to put that money into something that would do good. Trying to move that money from DARE to something that worked, oh my gosh, our chambers filled up with moms, so scared, so worried. So it's a hard thing to do. So when I say reprioritize, know that that's a difficult thing, but we still have to do it. We have to prioritize the funding where the needs are. So what I am proposing and have asked for is a full needs assessment, which would show the gaps that you're talking about. And then we need to figure out, put all of that resource we have towards the places with the most crying needs. So we have an opportunity to really make a change. Then, again, honesty and transparency. Even if you have the money, the workforce is a huge challenge. Getting people who are able to be counselors. I had a conversation with a woman who started a counseling firm She is a Black woman, and she wanted to train up other Black women counselors to serve their community, and she's burning out because she does it all herself. No help, not a lot of money, lots of demand from the community for her services. So we need to fund not just services, but also training, workforce development and training to help bring up the community-based health counselors who can serve those people. But that's where I start, needs assessment that shows the things you're talking about, and then we direct our money where the needs are. Thank you.
May you ask the question one more time? I just want to make sure I'm focusing on the right population. I think I heard you say not youth, not seniors, people in the middle.
But in between, the folks in between, there's not a lot of resources for them.
Absolutely.
There's a lot for the seniors, you have a lot for the youth.
Yep.
But those 40 and 50-year-old folks, where do they come in? Because what is out there for them right now, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's very minimal.
Yeah.
And what they do have, it takes forever for them to get the services.
Yeah, I've noticed that issue too. And what's your name again? Bridget, thank you for asking that, Bridget. I think all of us saw the devastation of the pandemic where a lot of our medical issues rose even more than they are now. The need went up dramatically in just a matter of a couple of years. And then, like my colleague mentioned, the scale of these Medicaid cuts are going to come in and so many more people are going to be suffering. I organized a panel of healthcare experts a couple of months ago just to give our communities an understanding of what is going to happen. $800 billion in cuts to Medicaid, that's not an abstract number. It's going to have a real impact here in King County. So I brought together the CEO of Harborview, somebody who works at Western State Hospital, people who work in our reproductive health care spaces, some long-term care workers, and they told us one by one what's going to happen right here in King County. The CEO of Harborview told us that in these next couple of years, it's almost going to be like we're back in the pandemic with emergency rooms overflowing, people being treated in hallways, patients being doubled up and tripled up in hospital rooms. Somebody who works at Western State Hospital told us it already takes 5 months to get access to mental health care in our King County area. Now that could be pushed out even longer. In the midst of a mental health crisis, by the way. People in the reproductive health care space told us 13,000 people are going to lose their reproductive health care. That means abortion access. It also means STI screenings during record levels of chlamydia and gonorrhea. It means no cancer screenings for a lot of people. And so we're preparing for all of those people who are losing their health care to flock to social safety net public health clinics, which King County operates, and those are going to be stretched thin as well. And so we have a big crisis up ahead, and we do have to prepare for this exact question that you're talking about. When I first saw this issue with people suffering from mental health and substance use disorder issues during the pandemic, and I asked, where do all these people go who we see slumped over on the streets? And the answer was mostly emergency rooms, sometimes jail, and then everything else is over capacity. So I went to the executive and I said, we need to run a behavioral health levy. We need a massive infusion of resources toward our healthcare system so that we can have more places for people to go when they're in crisis. And so we proposed $1.25 billion crisis care center initiative, which is going to build 5 crisis care centers around the region, including one in the South King County's zone. I'm not sure if White Center, I think White Center is actually in the central zone, so you will have access to one that occurs in Seattle, and that is an adult-focused one. There will be a youth-focused one that is separate, and then if you want to go south, there will be one in South King County as well. Anyone 24/7 urgent behavioral health care for anybody who wants to walk in and get that access, that's something we can look forward to. As my colleague mentioned, we absolutely should do a needs assessment and make sure that we're shaping the MID, which is the resources that we have for mental health and addiction work toward communities like this, depending on what the needs are here. We should work together on our Veterans and Seniors and Human Services Levy, which we just renewed a couple of years ago, but there will be another renewal process, and we should sit together, shape what that looks like, look at how we invest in neighborhoods like this, so that you have more human services, more healthcare options in areas like this. And we have to continue working to keep our public health clinics alive. You know, a lot of people, tens of thousands of people rely on King County's public health clinics, and they are in jeopardy. You know, my colleague has worked to make sure that they are sustainable. You know, we funded them through a harbor view tax just last year and are working through an arrangement to make sure that they continue to operate, and we need to keep those alive because we know that people here will rely on those, especially in the face of deep Medicaid cuts. And of course, we have to do everything that we can to make sure our most important healthcare system or healthcare hospital, which is Harborview, continues to operate and treat people, especially people in areas like White Center and the whole 4-state region, that is a hospital that is gonna suffer with these Medicaid cuts. They have lots of operational issues, they have large capital projects that are not being built yet, and so continuing to get the resources we need, but make sure that those resources are invested in a way where all of you can get accessible treatment at the most important hospital in our state will be critical for the next executive as well.
Thank you. Can I have one thing? Sorry, just one thought that I don't think either of us have covered yet. One thing that happens when we have these kind of waves of crisis, from COVID, homelessness, that we do put, as a county, we put so many of our resources just go towards the crisis end, dealing with the immediate, and it's true for all of it. Harborview becomes the focus because people are in crisis and they need to be in an inpatient facility. And what I hear you asking about is, how do people just get counseling? How do they get supports to keep them stable so that they don't slide into crisis? And I just wanted to speak up to acknowledge, I heard that, and I want to make sure that we are clear, that's got to be a focus as well. It is the most humane, effective, and cost-effective thing to do is help people stay stable than to deal with it after they've fallen off the cliff. So I'm sorry, thank you for that. And you should allow my colleague to have an extra minute too.
I agree.
Yeah.
I'd like to open it up now if anyone here tonight has questions. Are there any questions that you'd like to ask of the candidates?
Would you have anything like another Western hospital? I mean, we see so many people like just on the street that have mental things, and it's not, if they're homeless too, they need, you know, more than a couple days or just to walk into a clinic. They're not gonna walk into a clinic, but if they could go someplace and
Yeah, so
get a care for a certain period of time, but it doesn't seem like there's much of that.
absolutely. So first, the Crisis Care Centers initiative that I described before, that $1.25 billion addresses a number of things. Number one, the urgent care that I described before, people can walk in and stay for up to 2 weeks. That's the short-term stuff that you're talking about. That's not what you're talking about. But you move on, another category of expenditure is the workforce. Like my colleague mentioned, we need more people to operate these facilities, and so it does invest in workforce development, recruiting, retaining professionals in this space, giving them higher wages. The third category is the long-term residential mental health beds. And so if you were to ask a professional in King County how many beds there are for people to go and stay for 30 days, in the 90s it was something like 500 beds in all of King County. If you asked in 2019, it went down to 355 beds. If you asked in 2021, it went down to 244 beds. So those number of beds are declining every single year, and that's a major problem. And so part of the work of this levy is to build back that community residential health bed capacity, at least to where it was before, which is 355 beds. You're asking about something maybe even separate from that. I think you're maybe asking about involuntary care, is that?
Well, it could be either way.
Yeah.
But they need more than just
They need more than
walk
urgent
in
care,
and
absolutely.
come out. And
The involuntary care space is something that comes up a lot, and it's such a complicated issue. We absolutely do need a functioning involuntary care system, no doubt about it. It should not be common, it should be rare, but it absolutely should be accessible because there are some people who are a danger to themselves or to others and who've lost agency because of mental health issues or substance use disorder issues. That being said, it has, like I said, it has to be rare, it has to be therapeutic, it has to be culturally competent. We know that there is a lot of abuse that can happen if anyone can go around and be committed without due process. And so part of how you make that a functioning part of our system is, number one, you need a functioning criminal justice system. You know, there's been a lot of news reports lately that that system has had a big bottleneck because in order to give people involuntary care, they have to have their due process, they have to have their day in court, they need a public defender, but our criminal justice system has had a lot of issues with understaffing. We don't have enough public defenders, our courts have been backlogged, and so that whole system has just not been functional. And so making sure that we've staffed back up our public defenders, our court systems to make it workable, and then also work to make it so that that system doesn't lead to abuse like it did in the 70s and 80s, that's a top priority too.
I have been working on a proposal that was not my idea, actually. It was something I learned about from former Sheriff Sue Rahr when she was acting police chief in Seattle. And what they were finding in Seattle, and I know it to be true outside of Seattle as well, is that you have people who are suffering on the streets, they have a mental crisis or they're actively drug addicted and using. And the crisis care centers are a great place for people, or will be a great place for people who are willing to, are ready to raise their hand and say, I need help. It's voluntary. But you've got people who are violating the laws, risk to themselves and others, and unable to make that decision. They're not in a place. They may just, I mean, speaking of slumped over, like people can be barely conscious. And where they're going is jail. Or where they're going is Harborview because the jail won't take them because they're too sick. And then once they clean up a little bit, jail. It's a revolving door and it doesn't fix anything. And so the concept is, and we have some space, although it's currently being used for other stuff, I would like to prioritize, we have some space. If you look at the downtown jail, it's got that big box on the front of it. That is actually kind of separate from the main jail. It was meant to be a work release when it was built. And right now, it's mainly being used in part for a high acuity, what they call a high acuity homeless shelter. So it's for people who don't have places to be and who are very, very sick and it's wonderful. But there's a lot more space in there. And we could use that as a place that is, okay, instead of being arrested and going in the front door of the jail, you go to the side door. The side door is where you come in, you're not there voluntarily because you've been picked up for breaking the law, right? So now you're in custody. But instead of putting you in jail, which does nothing for you in this circumstance, you get help to stabilize, get connected to treatment, get connected to housing, because there are these systems that exist and there are pathways into them. We connect people through that method. It can be a diversion program where if you're doing this, you're not going to get prosecuted for whatever it was. And then we can start to slow that door, which is like the highest use people who are in and out of that revolving door. It's not thousands of people, it's a couple, 300 people. So if we could start to break that cycle for some of those really troubled people and get them stabilized and into housing and care, I think we could really start to make a difference. But it's worth giving it a try, and I really want to try to launch something like that if I get to be county executive.
Are we the ones who call on people?
I was there.
How much, this, both of you, but how much time have you spent in North Highline and or White Center? So what do you, have you ever walked around there? Do you have any idea of what it looks like?
Yeah.
You know, the restaurants we have and all the wonderful people we have and so, you know, that's the question.
I want to volunteer to be the remedial student on this question and offer to come and do that. I would be very happy to come and walk around the neighborhood with you all. I know I've been here, but the truth is I don't understand the boundaries that well. So when you say, like, have you seen our restaurants? I'm not sure what your restaurants are.
Most people here don't either.
Yeah, so let me just say, I would be very happy to come on a weekend, walk around, see what it's like with whoever wants to do
I
that.
could certainly arrange that, we'd be
Yeah.
happy to.
Yeah, we'll follow up with Barbara.
Yeah.
Yes, I've been here multiple times, and to be fair to my colleague, if we were on the east side and you asked me if I've been to that area, I would probably say no too, like, we have our district. This is not my district, but it's next door to my district, and so, yes, I've eaten at multiple restaurants here. We go rollerblading, you know, famous rollerblading rink here multiple times. Done a lot of joint work with the Skyway Coalition and the White Center CDA multiple times on some of the economic development stuff we talked about, community center stuff, other unincorporated participatory budgeting program stuff, so yes.
I've heard about the new bar.
For better or worse.
You have a question?
Thank you. Hi. Thank you for coming here
Of
tonight.
course.
Public safety is about half of the budget of the county, right?
Not
More?
quite, no. If you look at our general fund, it's about 70% of our general fund.
Okay.
And our general fund is a small part of our larger budget. Our larger budget's probably $10 billion a year. Our general fund is what, $2 billion?
Something like that. Why it matters? The general fund is the flexible money that we can use for virtually anything. Most of the rest of the budget is dedicated and you can't touch it for anything other than for what it's for. So you pay your sewer rates,
Right.
we can only use that for sewers. So it's complicated, but we use an awful lot of our budget for public safety.
Yeah,
It's
and
very common.
I'm wondering what we can do for cost containment. I see the cities using these community service officers, I think they're called. Is the county, I'm not that aware, I live next door to White Center. So is the county looking at that, does that save money? Are there ways that we can like change things around so that it's not out of control to say, it's expensive, we have to keep throwing money at it? I mean, is there something we could do to contain the cost
That is,
and get more public safety?
yeah, it's a really good question. The status of our, and I'm gonna look to the sheriff to correct me. Y'all correct me if I get this wrong. We put an awful lot of funding into having a staffing level of sheriff's deputies, let's just say. If you look at the response times that you can provide with the level of sheriff's deputies that we fund, it is nothing like what you get in a city. You have to wait a lot longer to get response. And that's the budgeted numbers. We don't have, like, I think we're at like 70% staffing within the budgeted numbers. So we're not spending all the money because we don't have all the people, except you have to put into a lot into overtime when you, yeah. So I think for me, the analysis starts with what is the level of service that you need? We start with that. And then how do you provide that service? You can absolutely provide what's called co-response. It's like sort of a newer term. And we're kicking that off at King County now, where you have people who are trained in like the helping professions, social workers, et cetera. And if someone's having a mental health crisis and doesn't need a badge and a gun to respond, you can send those people. If it's a risky situation, but you want to have that, you might send somebody who's a uniformed officer and a social worker. And then if it's just straight up law enforcement, you send. But we got to set the level. I will tell you, the unincorporated parts of East King County, way out in the rural areas, are very lightly patrolled, very lightly. They have very few people, long, like you could wait 20 minutes for a call. True? Is that true? Is that fair?
Or longer.
Or longer, thank you. I want to make sure I'm not overstating it. So I don't know if it's a money-saving proposition so much as we have got to figure out how to serve the needs as well as possible, fairly, and fill those vacancies, because otherwise you don't get response when you need it. Your businesses don't get responses when they have to call for help. Your neighbors don't. I hear the question very much about saving tax dollars. And let me say one other thing about that, if I could. We have tax dollars in public safety. We have, and that's response to problems when they happen. We have tax dollars in prevention, where we invest in people, which is very important because, again, it is the most humane, cheapest way to deal with public safety is to prevent problems in the first place. And then you have successful, happy people, right? Like, that's what we want. We recently had an audit that showed that we were not doing a very good job at all of overseeing some of our contracts. That there was not the fiscal oversight that was needed, I'm sorry.
my question.
I'm sorry, okay, well, I could just start right there. So I'll pause and allow you to have your question. Just say the point is, in addition to setting levels of service, having the right levels of staffing and filling those positions, we also need to make sure we are providing oversight and accountability for the money we're spending so that we know it's going to the purpose that we have. And that's how I think you are more accountable for your dollars. Sorry.
I was just wondering if the autopsy had been done on that, you know, for why, do you know why this, I don't know if people were, you know, the social service
Yeah.
programs were not being audited to, and my name's Cindy, and I'm a former president. I'm here as one of the speakers. I'm the former president of
Wow.
the teachers union around here.
Mhm.
So I taught in White Center for many years
Nice.
and in Boulevard Park for many years, and I'm still involved with the environmental stuff.
Nice.
And so we've been trying to push alternative, you know, youth programs, and just
Right.
have felt like a lot of the programs, there was a lot of money for anti-violence, and it was flushed down the toilet a lot. It felt like for people in the community, where the actual people that were providing the services ended up, you know, not actually doing the work and getting in a lot of trouble.
I'll kind of wrap my thought up quickly and then allow my colleague to speak. But in the audit that we had,
Yes.
they looked at 36 contracts, most of them were youth serving contracts. How I read the audit, primarily what happened was that our funding increased fairly dramatically for these programs, which is a good thing. The voters are very generous in this county, and they vote for these sort of helping programs. And the number of contracts increased very quickly because we made a policy decision to work directly with smaller community-based organizations rather than umbrella groups like the United Way, for example. And so now we have a bunch more contracts because we have smaller contracts and a bunch more money, so the balloon keeps getting bigger and bigger, and the fiscal capacity did not grow accordingly. So we didn't have enough people to do education of our contract partners, oversight of whether the bills were being handled correctly. Frankly, we fail the community and we fail the providers when we don't support them in this way. Oversight is support, in my view. You don't want organizations to now suddenly be having a scandal because we didn't help them to do things right in the first place. There's a path to fix this, but the very first thing we have to do is we have to finish the job of understanding the problem. We audited 36 contracts. There are almost 600 contracts. So we don't know the scope of the problem. It might be that we have one particularly challenged bucket of programs, but it might be a broader problem than that. So I think the first thing the next executive has to do is do a complete audit and then scale up the solutions to the size of the problem.
I'll go back to
That's a
the
lot.
first question.
Now I get to sit back for a
Yeah. On the question of are there cost-effective ways of promoting public safety? I think the answer to that is absolutely. Ways that are less expensive than hiring more police? Yes. Does that mean we don't hire more police? No. You know, I think first and foremost, coming from Skyway, I know that people in unincorporated areas have a different relationship with their police officers than some of my constituents in my incorporated cities. There's more of a small town feel type of relationship. My Skyway constituents love their storefront. They know them by first name. They want to get to know them. When I hold town halls, no matter what the demographic of the town hall is, what they're saying to me is they want more reliable, faster service. And so I have worked with the sheriff's office to get more service in Skyway. What are the vacancies right now, Sheriff Coltendo? 70?
100.
Oh, it's back to 100? I thought it was going down.
It was.
Oh, no. Okay, so it's going in the wrong direction.
I just got 16 in the last couple of weeks. We have
Congratulations.
I shared with the group about our incentives that we're offering, so we're working on it. But
Okay.
it's about 100, and with North Bend, it'll be over 100.
Yeah. So we have worked this year to make sure that we avoid those cuts and make sure we have the revenue needed to avoid deeper cuts. If we didn't pass this criminal justice sales tax that we passed this year, I believe the prior executive was saying that we would have to make $30 million of cuts to the sheriff's office, which we have now avoided. So in terms of do we do cost savings by not hiring and filling those roles? No. There are definitely cost-effective ways, from my experience, of supplementing and improving public safety. I'll give you an example. In key neighborhoods throughout my district, whether it's Rainier Beach or Mount Baker or the Central District, something that we've done is increase presence through people who are not necessarily police officers. You know, we have violence interrupters, we have music, better lighting, better relationship building, better de-escalation training for the small businesses in an area, better coordination across all of the different stakeholders, you know, better coordination between law enforcement and service providers and small businesses so that everybody knows what their role is and they're working together and meeting on a regular basis at least once a month to share information and to collaborate more effectively, and that has had a positive impact. So I definitely believe in the presence model of public safety. Presence can mean police officers, but I think just having more security professionals, having more what they call corner greeters. I have an organization called Rainier Beach Action Coalition in my district, and they have people who are standing on the corner greeting people with a smile and food, and that helps with public safety. It makes people feel more safe. And so I think there are many cost-effective ways of promoting public safety.
She's in charge.
This one's for Claudia. Going back, you said that a lot of funds dramatically increased and then weren't able to keep up with really managing those funds properly, if I understand correctly. I think when we talk about these funds, I think there may be a conflation. You said that the taxpayers are very generous. There was also, during COVID, has been mentioned many times, that we all know that a lot of money was just printed and shoved out the door.
Federal money, yeah.
A lot of it. And then it's like, as people who spend that money go, yahoo!
Yeah.
And then now you talk about all this money that came. So are you conflating the COVID money with the tax money? That's my question.
I wasn't intending to, but let me pull them apart just
Okay.
verbally. And let me just say, your question reminds me of a mentor of mine, a deputy county executive, who used to jokingly say to me, you know we care because we spend.
Yeah.
And the joke of that is, what we need to focus on is the outcomes. Are we getting the change we want to see? Are we getting the services and the supports to people we want to see? We shouldn't be judged by how much money we spend. We should be judged by how much outcome we have. During COVID, federal money rained down upon us. Absolutely true. Billions. And I want to say, so I was the chair of the council for 3 years during COVID, and we passed 13 budgets, 14 budgets. Usually we do one every 2 years plus a supplemental or two. And it was just going. And we made an intentional policy decision to err on the side of getting money to people in need. So that people didn't, so the rental assistance went out the door and people didn't lose their homes in the middle of a pandemic. Knowing that we were taking a risk. We knew we were taking a risk. We knew that some of that money was going to walk away. At the state, it was nothing like what happened at L&I at the state. But, so that's
unemployment and all that.
Right, that's what I mean, unemployment is L&I. So we knew we were doing that. What I'm talking about is something a little different. We have multiple large human services levy. Most of them are passed by the voters. Those increased dramatically over the time I've been on the council, which is over 10 years now. And one of the things that, we're both council members, so we tend to talk about programs and budgets, because that's what the council does. What the executive does is implement all this stuff. And what we collectively did not see, and we got to own this, we did not see that the increase in funding through the levies, not through the federal COVID money, and the increase in the number of contracts was leading to a need for more financial professionals in the county that we did not budget for or hire. The next county executive's going to have to fix that, which means that we're going to have to put a little bit more money into administration and a little less into services, because we have to have the oversight of where it's going. It's not about raising more taxes, it's about using the ones we have.
Also, you lose the confidence of the voters.
Absolutely, and this is why we gotta fix it, and we gotta be really transparent about it.
Yeah.
Because if we're not really, and that's why I think we need the full audit. Because if we don't know the extent of the problem, we've got our heads stuck in the ground, and the next scandal that's gonna undermine public confidence is just around the corner, we just don't know what it is.
Yeah.
So we gotta go find out all the problems and then get to fixing them and do it all in public, which can be, you know, hard, but we gotta not be afraid of the criticism, we gotta face it and fix it. And let me just say, I ran a jail reform effort. That's how I got to be the jail director, was by running a jail reform effort. The federal government came and told us that we were violating the civil rights of our inmates in a variety of important ways. Nobody wants to admit that. Nobody wants to say we are messing up in that way. But we had to acknowledge it, we had to negotiate a settlement with the US Department of Justice, just like the Seattle Police Department had for all those years, and then we had to implement all the changes they said. It can be done, you can make major changes, you can turn this big ship, but we have to do it very publicly so that people see that we've done it. I am agreeing with the look on your face.
Well, just on a personal note.
Yeah.
I was a small landlord, a house that I bought from working in Alaska processing fish when I was 21 years old, and I kept it. And the mayor took the house from me and gave it to the tenants for almost 2 years without paying me a dime.
Oh, because of the
The
tenant
eviction moratorium.
moratorium, yeah.
The governor received $11 billion in COVID money. When he ended COVID, he still had $6 billion. He didn't give a dime to a single landlord. My tenants tore the house up, $70,000 worth of damage. I didn't get a dime. He violated my Fifth Amendment's rights, you know, and I had to pay taxes. The mayor said I couldn't even sell my house. This is in Seattle. I had to pay taxes, insurance. I watched the tenants tear the house up, and there was nothing I could do. So you better believe I'm cynical.
I hear that.
And that, I was interviewed on King 5 News. I warned them. You're doing this, all the small landlords are going to give up, and it's going to be corporate landlords, and that's what you got.
How do we get on this topic?
Government accountability.
Yes.
We're talking about government accountability.
Yeah.
I have a question. The Seattle Times, I think it was a month or two ago, reported on the oversight of the audit. I don't know if it's the same audit you're talking about.
Probably.
And the number was like staggering. But then they came out and corrected the amount.
Correct.
So how much was the amount? I mean, how do we know?
Here's the thing, we don't.
Okay.
We don't. Let's just be really honest with ourselves. We don't know the full amount, and that's why we have to sort of, but let me say, I ran into the auditor in the hallway outside the council chambers. Our auditor is a lovely person and a very strong professional at the day that news hit about their mathematical
It was
error.
huge.
And she told me it was the second worst day of her professional career, because if you're an auditor, you should get the numbers right.
So my follow-up is, are you finding misuse, and what are the consequences of that? Can you get the money back, or is it just sloppy bookkeeping on the?
Let's give her my turn.
What's that?
I'm gonna give her my turn.
The consequences of that are that we need to do much better. You know, first to answer your question, my colleague is right in that we don't know the full scale. Like she said, 36 contracts were audited. There are many more contracts that need to be audited, and we should do that work. But between a 95% growth versus a 6,000% growth of the program, that 6,000% is just blatantly wrong. It's nowhere close to that. So if it's a difference between thousands of percentages of growth versus 95, I'm pretty confident we're closer to 95% growth. That is a different question than how many contracts within that 95% growth have been misuse of funds, right? And so we do need to do that homework to find out, like my colleague had mentioned. Right now, that they are doing the work of figuring out, are they going to claw money back? What are going to be the consequences? That work is happening right now, based on my understanding. But moving forward, the consequences that we need to make our oversight and administrative resources much bigger within the pot of resources that exists. So if, 10% was going toward administrative and oversight, that percentage needs to be bigger, which will reduce the number of resources that are going out in the form of direct service grants. And so I've released an entire plan called King County Delivers, which is my plan for promoting government accountability, efficiency, and transparency if elected. I'm calling for an office of internal audit so that we're constantly auditing and doing that proactive auditing across all of our departments. I'm calling for quarterly reports on progress. Like we mentioned before, we should not be celebrating at the point of spending, we should be celebrating at the point of outcomes. And outcomes require transparency. If we collected some money from you, we should be able to tell you, based on this program that we started, based on the growth of this levy, we have seen X number of people moved from the street and into housing. We have seen X number of overdose death reversals. We have seen this many people avoiding emergency room visits. Those are the types of data points that we need to be tracking as outcomes, and we should release that quarterly the same way that a public company does, and that's part of my King County Delivers plan.
Can I say one thing? It's a little hard to describe what happened with the audit, but I'm gonna try. What we learned was things were done incorrectly. Bills came in that were from a primary contractor for a subcontractor that hadn't been approved. Bills came in after the term of the contract had ended, and these things like this, and then they were paid. Were those bills we should have paid? Maybe. If they did the services we asked for, if they provided the counseling to the young people and the young people got the counseling and there was a technical error, maybe it was not waste, fraud, or abuse. But because of the lack of oversight, we don't know. And when we don't know where money is going, waste, fraud, and abuse inevitably follows because people figure out that there's no oversight and they take advantage. And so that's why it's important. So that's part of the reason we can't say a number. We could probably say a number of the contracts and the amount of money for those contracts that weren't overseen properly. That doesn't mean all that money was wasted. I have people tell me millions of dollars. I don't really know that yet. And it's a tough place to be in. I gotta say, it's not comfortable sitting here to say, I don't know. We need knowledge first, and then we can figure out what the answers are.
Right, and it might have been okay.
It might have been well-intentioned and actually done the thing we wanted the money to do.
Right.
But without controls, we're inevitably gonna lose money, and it'll get worse if we keep not having controls. So it's super important that we get controls.
So we're getting close to, we could go on for hours. So maybe just a couple more quick questions, and yes.
This may really not be quick. We seem to have sort of walked around it, but nobody has asked about the homelessness issue. And I'm not, no. It seems, my impression is that a lot of money is being spent. Nevertheless, the number of homeless seems to be increasing. Part of that is obviously the housing issue and cost of housing, but it still seems that there are issues there, that there's all these good intentions, but nothing much is really, final result is still that the numbers are going up. And at the same time, there is what I don't remember the name of the group that was set up to have the towns and the county.
King County Regional Homelessness Authority.
Yes. And they appear to have had management and other issues and not really have been particularly successful. From what I have gathered, I could be wrong. This is not mainly Seattle Times and Access reporting. But what do you suggest? Because in a sense, to me, it seems like we're spending a lot of money and we're not getting anywhere. What can we do to actually reach some results? And I've seen, there's housing being built here and there. It's not that there's nothing being built, but what can we overall do?
You know, one of the things I love about this campaign the most? People ask questions like, you have 90 seconds.
To
How do we fix
answer the most
homelessness?"
complex. Yeah, I just want to put out there, this one is probably good, we could discuss this one for an hour, so, I
We
can,
can all spend.
I can give a very abridged version, because this is, you know, the most complex question of our time and the most important question as well. We start off by saying we absolutely have a housing crisis. By 2044, King County has to build, I think, 308,000 more homes for people, and that is a big problem. You know, that means that people are going to be priced out, that means some people are going to be by design left on the street, and we know that's not the whole story. We also know that we have a mental health and addiction crisis, and we don't have enough behavioral health services for them. Like I mentioned before this Crisis Care Centers initiative that I was describing before, we have one urgent behavioral health care facility for all of King County with 46 beds. Like, that is very, very subpar. We need a lot more of that. At the same time, we also know that there is a great nexus with our criminal justice system of our unhoused population. People who are suffering from homelessness and addiction, and they commit a crime maybe, and they end up in the jail. That's not the best place for them. They end up back on the street, and now incarceration has had them kicked off of Medicare. They've lost their job. Maybe they're more traumatized. Maybe they're separated from their community. Maybe they lost all their belongings. So there is a really bad cycle happening. We can attack this from, what do you do upstream before people even get into these situations? I'm not going to go there. Obviously, we need more affordable housing. We need better jobs. We need youth after-school activities. We need mental health services upstream. That is a long conversation. I'm going to just go downstream to, what do you do in the emergency response portion of this when people are outside? There's a scale issue, there's a coordination issue, and there's an accountability issue. The scale issue is, I said this when we were at our KUOW interview last night. We go to a lot of interviews together every day. And even if King County Regional Homelessness Authority were operating at maximal capacity, if you open the newspaper and all the headlines you read were, this is the most amazing agency in the world, it would not be solving homelessness. It just wouldn't, because we don't have enough permanent supportive housing, we don't have enough shelter, we don't have enough mental health and addiction services, and so yes, they could effectively move the individuals that they have into a stable home, and they could do that effectively, and they could pay their contractors on time, and there could be no mismanagement and chaos, but that still wouldn't be enough. So there's a scale issue. We have to increase supply of all of these things. That is going to mean more resources. I hate to tell you, but we're going into even more challenging times. We're going to lose a lot of federal funding. Already our executive is telling us that one of our biggest shelters in Soto is going to probably close down in 2027 because the federal funding is going to run dry. And so we're going to have to figure out, there are going to be many more of those instances of us losing resources. But whatever we do, we have to prioritize this issue and we have to scale up. Then there's the coordination issue. We absolutely need to work more collaboratively with our regional partners, with the private sector, with the nonprofit sector, and then all of the people that we mentioned before who are cycling between emergency rooms and jails and the street. All of the people who are involved in responding at each of those, they need to be better integrated so that we're not just releasing people without a next plan. We need a strong continuum of care so that there's warm handoff to warm handoff to warm handoff. Every single individual has an individualized plan, and we're properly tracking them through their full life cycle of services that they're getting until they've recovered. And lastly, I'll talk about the accountability issue. This is probably the one that you all are feeling, which is, yeah, it feels like you're spending a lot of money and you're not seeing the results that you want to see. So from an accountability standpoint, all the things that we talked about at BCHS have to apply to King County Regional Homelessness Authority too. We need to do proactive auditing, we need to have strong financial controls, we need to make sure that we're tracking outcomes, and every person that we contract with, every organization that we're working with, we're seeing what the outcomes are, that people are moving from the street and into stable housing, that they're staying there for a longer period, and those are the ways that we measure success. And so more accountability through stronger oversight, stronger financial controls is going to be really important. And then I'll close with this and just say that if this regional model is going to be successful, we're going to have regional buy-in from the whole region. And right now, when I go around and I talk to people around the region, they don't have confidence in this entity. And so coming together and having some kind of reset where we tell them we are all in this together, we have new leadership, this is our opportunity to do something new, that is a message that I'm gonna come with and make sure that I come with open ears, ready to collaborate and do something new.
I won't try to add a lot, but I'd like to talk about two aspects of your question. We know the general ball of things that we have to do in order to move any individual person out of homelessness to stability. And we know how to do them at a modest scale. When I was the mayor of Bellevue, one of the complaints that I get a lot politically, being from the east side, from my constituents on the east side, is you are importing Seattle's problems here, and I have to look at my constituents and say, no, it is quite the contrary. We have been exporting our problems for a very long time. We don't have a lot of human services. We don't have any shelter. When I was mayor, we had no permanent shelters on the east side. We had no permanent supportive housing. So anybody who fell into this level of need had to go to Seattle or somewhere else. So I made it my business. When I became the mayor, I shook hands with the mayor of Redmond and the mayor of Kirkland, and we did a regional thing. We said, we are going to create a full suite of homeless shelters here in East King County. And we did. 10 years later, we have shelters for women, children, families, and men. And the hardest one to cite was the male shelter, because nobody wants it. Nobody wants a shelter for 100 men in homelessness who come with challenges in their neighborhood. But we found a place, we set it up, it's working, it's a place for people to come off the streets. The councils of many of our cities have also, when they provide this kind of structure, and in Bellevue this was true, said, we are now providing a place for you to be, and we don't want you camping on the streets. You can't be here, but you can be here. This is the place we provide for you. And because the scale of the problem in East King County, which is, although we have pockets of people who very much have lower incomes and there's a lot of need, it's by and large a very wealthy area. And so the problem was smaller to begin with, and a modest investment and coordination has really beat down street homelessness. You don't see a lot of it in East King County now. So we know if you have outreach, if you have a place to go, and if you have then that pipeline to housing stability, you really can make a difference. The problem in our region is there's so many people on the streets. In order to help to do that for everyone is extremely difficult. So that's one thing I want to say. I think one of what would be a meaningful way to move towards more trust and accountability is you could identify specific populations and eradicate homelessness in those populations. We could eradicate homelessness among veterans. That is doable. We've already got a lot less homelessness among veterans than we had in the past. You could eradicate homelessness among children and families. It could be done. And if you can do that, if you can show, hey, we really got our hands around this, then the public will trust more that we can come back and take on the larger issue. I'm not saying stop providing shelter for everybody else, but I'm saying if you're going to do an additional emphasize a place where you can solve a problem, show the public we can solve it. And there's so much more we can talk about this, but I am going to stop. It's after 9 o'clock.
I have one quick question.
Is it a yes or no question?
No, the county went and bought a number of hotels, motels, or whatever to
Yes.
do homeless, but it seems to be a problem now with issues in those apartments or hotels or motels or whatever due to drug activity or whatever, that they're empty or they have to not paying landlords or I don't know. But they seem to not be working as well as they were meant to work.
Let me offer to come back another night and have a lengthy discussion, but can I give you a very short answer?
I sold it.
The word that I have learned is
Yep.
acuity.
One less
The
rental
level of
in the market.
acuteness of people's individual problems has risen very high. So I've heard Derek Belgard, who's the executive director of the Chief Seattle Club and does a lot of this for the Native American community, say, when I started in this business 30 years ago, the people who needed shelter then are people who don't get shelter now. The people who needed hospitalization then are in our shelters. The people who needed nursing home care, like 24/7 care, are in our permanent supportive housing where you're only getting intermittent care. The level of need that people have is exceeding the services that are available in places like that. And so, yes, they are struggling. And it's yet another thread of this challenge that we're gonna have to live up to. But I'll say the permanent supportive housing model really does work when it's done well. It is a way to get people who will never be able to live fully independently. A lot of these people are just sick. Don't have a job, fully disabled, on dialysis, alone. That person needs support, and if they have no income, where are they gonna get it? Permanent supportive housing. So, yeah, can we come back and do this again, maybe in December? Like, let's do a holiday party or something. Talk homelessness all night.
I would also just close by saying, everything that my colleague said is true, and I would encourage you, and I can send you some results that they did on the results of Health Through Housing, the hotel motel purchase program that you said. They released some data this year, and they saw some really good results. You know, emergency room visits were down. When they do go to emergency rooms, their length of stay has gone down. And so those kind of positive metrics are also there too. So permanent supportive housing, even though the challenges are going up, like Claudia said, it does work when done well.
Thank you all.
Well,
Thank you so much.
Thank you.